Hello, everyone, and welcome to Career Hacker Unplugged. I'm very, very excited today to be talking to Melissa Anzman, the founder of Loosen Your White Collar, which is just a brilliant name. Cool site. I don't know who designed your site, but the first minute I went there, I was like, that's awesome. So that's very cool. I'm very excited to have her here today. She's a former human resources leader. She calls herself a reformed corporate drone, which I like. But today, now she helps women, or actually not just women, she helps late 20s to 40-year-olds find love in their work. So that maybe they're staying in their job and they're just trying to figure out how to love their job, or they're trying to figure out how to get the hell out of their job so they can find a new one that they love. So happy to have you here today, Melissa.
Thank you. So happy to be here. I'm glad to share this experience. I'm a big fan of yours as well. So
Good. So I think we should just totally dig right into the questions. I have way more questions for you than I have for most people. So I probably won't get to all of them today, but we'll try. So the first thing I want to talk about is I guess it was last April, you quit your corporate job, hence the reformed corporate drone. And I just wanted to let you have a chance to tell your story about how you did it. How long did it take you? Was it a long process? And then maybe if you could share one or two ahas as to sort of how you made it happen.
Absolutely. So I actually have quit my corporate job twice. I'm a failed quitter. So the first time that I quit my job, it was on a whim. I didn't do much planning other than saving money, and I had no plan. And that clearly didn't work for me because I went back and got another corporate job. But this time in April, I did quit for good, and I did a lot more planning ahead of time. For me, I knew that corporate world wasn't for me. I mean, I've always known that, but I wasn't sure what else there was, which is funny. Both my parents are entrepreneurs, so I'm not sure why that never came into my head. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, and so instead I sort of felt safe and comfortable doing what I was doing. And when I knew I had to go back to work, I made a decision to take a bridge job. And what I mean by that is something that, I could work hard at from 9 to 5 and leave at work. I had been traveling so much before and just so 120% all the time that I wasn't able to really focus on me and what I wanted to do. So I took this last corporate job with that in mind. And I gave myself a timeline. And I said, if I absolutely must stay here, that is it, but no more than a year. And please, please, please be less than a year. So that was how I sort of approached it. And I set some goals for myself. And they weren't as focused as I typically set goals. They were more of, by this date, I want to have my website up. And I actually did design my website. So thank you.
You did?
Yeah, I designed and coded it. So
it's awesome.
But anyway, thank you. I wanted a website name by a certain date. Because to me, the name brings the feeling. I didn't know what I was going to do on the site, but I wanted a name. And then I set other goals. Like I wanted to have a certain number of clients making a certain number of income before I quit. And I was reaching those goals a little bit sooner than I expected, which is fantastic. But I also ran into a really good opportunity to sort of make me pause and reevaluate, should I go back to work or not? I was selected to be on a jury at a murder trial.
Wow.
I know, crazy. I was the foreman. It gets all crazy. But essentially, as we were all sitting there for, almost 2 weeks, everyone kept saying, gosh, I just need to go back to work. I can't wait to get back to work.
Oh.
And I'm sitting there saying, this is fantastic. I don't have to be at work. Like, it was so eye-opening for me. And so I decided that, I was 95% of the way to meeting my goals, and that was a clear sign to me that it was time to leave. So I actually, after the trial, went back to work and gave my notice.
Wow.
Yeah, that was sort of the turning point for me. I mean, I knew it was coming. I'd obviously worked up to it, but the timing was sort of arbitrary until that presented itself to me.
That's really cool. I've heard of a lot of oh my gosh, I can't speak. Catalyst moments for people. That was a good one. A murder trial, a jury foreman. That's pretty interesting.
It was crazy, but yeah, who knew it would end up being, such a catalyst?
Yeah, that's great.
So the aha moments for me, along the way, like you asked about, I think one of them, the biggest one for me was that I didn't have to make a choice of what I needed to do forever.
That's good. That's good.
That was huge. And I don't know why we are conditioned to believe that we make one career choice or one life path. But it took me a long time to change that thinking for myself. And as soon as I did that, it really shifted from what am I going to do as a business to how can I use all the things I love doing in my business. So that shift was huge to help me move forward. And I think, where that came from was just looking at those people that I admire online and offline and seeing that they don't only show up and do marketing every day.
Right.
Why I think I need to do that is beyond me. I've never even had a job where I only did HR or only did communications. I've always done a lot of things at once. And so thinking that I could apply that outside of work was a huge aha. And then also realizing that for me, having money in the bank is a safety net that I don't work well with. So very, very strange. It kills my parents to no end to hear that. But I kept waiting for a magical savings number in my bank. And when I had it and more the first time around, it didn't inspire me to act. I wasn't sort of under pressure. So having that the second go around was really helpful to keep me on track.
That's really interesting. Yeah, actually, I was talking to somebody the other day about this idea of urgency. And I sort of went through a period myself where I wasn't motivated, even though I had the money to leave when I wanted to leave, like working with a certain amount of clients or whatever. But when I had nothing, absolutely nothing, like I got so inspired by that feeling of urgency. And I was like, that's a really cool feeling. And not like a scary feeling, but a really good feeling to be like feeling urgent about it, but also knowing I could do something about it.
Absolutely. I mean, it lights a fire under me. I am, I hesitate to call myself a procrastinator because I'm not really, but I do kind of need a spark or a drive under me to get something done. And for me, that was, really removing all the safety nets that I could and still be smart about it. I mean, I'm not saying go jump off a cliff, by all means. But I really put myself on a timeline and I treated myself as I would counsel any of my people from an HR perspective or an employee who wasn't happy at work. I mean, my sort of line in HR is, well, if you're not happy, leave or be happy. Like I can't help you. You know what I mean? And so, you have to make that choice. And I just wasn't doing that for myself. I was just letting life pass me by and it felt like it. And I was just tired of that. And so once I didn't have the fallback, I was able to move forward.
That's great. So one of the things that you talk about is finding your umbrella. And a lot of people talk about finding your passion. Where's my passion? Blah, blah, blah. It's like this constant, perpetual seek for the passion. I love how you say, for you realized it was I had to find my umbrella. So can you tell people what you mean by that?
Absolutely. So I'm going to back up and just sort of have a note on finding your passion because I'm passionate about that phrase. Strangely enough, I think that's so much pressure. I don't resonate with that. I thought, finding your own passion had to be, if I'm not a top-notch musician, I'm not passionate. If there's not something I live for to get out of bed every day, there's no passion there. So for me, passion was way too far to reach. I mean, I spent 3 years trying to find my passion, which is crazy to me. But, what I decided or, what I found for myself was it's more about, passion is what you create on it. And so for me, it was finding my umbrella. I had a lot of different things that I really enjoyed doing. There were also a list of things that I excelled at but weren't high on my list. And what I realized was you don't have to do those things just because you excel at them. You can choose to leverage your skills and talents as you want them. And for me, finding my umbrella was really about taking those things that I do that are special skills and things I love that don't fall together. You know, they're not all under the umbrella of human resources. They're not all under the umbrella of communications. But I've been able to create a business using all of those skills. You know, I build websites, I coach clients, I help resume. You know, there's just so many things in there that I love, that until I allowed myself to have sort of mini passions and have my job be that, for me it's chaotic, but I love that chaos, something different every day. To allow that, I wasn't going to be able to create a business, and that was a huge barrier for me, because sort of like I mentioned before, picking one thing that you want to do for the rest of your life just scares me. Like, I'm a commitment folk. Like, ooh. But saying, well, you know what, today I'm going to work on this, and tomorrow I'll do that, and that to me is freedom in its whole. That's why I wanted to be an entrepreneur, is to leverage those. So
yeah.
What I mean when I say find your umbrella.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I always, I sort of, the passion piece, or go find your passion, is always interesting to me, because I feel like it's one of those things that people will think about, and they'll say, oh, you know, I'm super passionate about animals, right? And then they go and they work with the animal, and they're like, no, I don't like to do it. It's like, passion doesn't come first. Like, right. The work comes first. Like, you figure out what you're passionate about by actually doing it. And that idea of finding your passion is so passive, and it never works. And that's why everyone's still trying to find it and freaking out about it, because it doesn't work when you try to find it like that.
He wants to show up and knock on your doorstep.
Yeah.
It just never did for me. And I was like, all right.
Yeah.
You know, and can you imagine the letdown when you think you find your passion and you hate the job? I mean, we've all had that.
Yes.
So
yeah, and you've put so much into that passion. Like, you've wrapped up dreams and plans and ideas, and it's not it, and that's okay. But you know, we attach a lot of sort of failure to that if it didn't go as we planned. You talk about something called the paused entrepreneur. What's that?
You know, that is something that I guess I've done myself, but I also have worked through HR, you know, recruiting, worked with so many people who have gone out to sort of quit their job and follow their passion, for lack of a better phrase, and ended up failing at being an entrepreneur and coming back to the workforce. And really, you know, it's sort of 50-50 of how many then go back out again after learning some skills and some needs and figuring out what went wrong. But essentially, it's being humble enough, perhaps, to say that, you know, this didn't work. I didn't know all the answers. I didn't do this in the smart way, or my product wasn't viable. I didn't do my research beforehand, or whatever that is. And coming back to the workforce and essentially working for somebody else again. And some people do that because, like I said, you know, a failed business, but others do it because they realize they hated working for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so idealistic, I think, these days to say, oh, I'll be my own boss. But you forget that you have to generate your own income and your own sales leads, and you have to create your own schedule, and you know, you have priorities and demands, and you don't have an assistant, and you know, there's so many different things that come with that, that many go back to a traditional job to try and make that work.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's not right for everybody, and I don't know, somewhere along the way, I think we've given the message that if it's not, there's something wrong with you or something, but it really just isn't. I mean, there's a lot of people that it's not a right fit. But I think, you know, it's great that people give it a try, and obviously nothing wrong with going back and saying, you know what, this is a better fit for me. This is where I'm doing better. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that. So you talk a little bit about how to know when to leave. Like, how do you know that you've done the work so that you can actually leave your job? You talked about we call it the side hustle. Pam Slim calls it the side hustle. how long did you have your side hustle, and how valuable is that to people who are considering leaving?
Yeah, I think a side hustle is different for everybody. I haven't sort of met one person who has the same definition of it. For me, I started formulating my business, the site that I'm on now, the Loosen Your White Collar, in January, and the site went up March 1st, and I left at the end of April.
Wow.
So
You made it work fast.
Well, yes, I tend to be that way with certain things. When I get inspired, I'm super focused and on it. So I don't think that's probably a realistic timeline for others to base their times on. That's just my personal experience. The first time I quit, I knew for a year that I was going to quit. I had sort of a contract that was ending, and I couldn't leave before then. So I sort of tried a side hustle for a year, and it never took off. So that just sort of gives you the yin and yang of timelines. I think what is most important about a side hustle is it allows you to try things that you can't necessarily try without a safety net of sort of income and a real job. If you sort of have this idea you want to be a freelance writer, for instance, in reality, you may hate it, and instead of quitting your job and not having that option open, you really are able to try some things out and figure out what works for you or how you would schedule your day, or things like that without doing it. And I think that's the best benefit of a side hustle. The extra income's fine. It's not something that I would be excited about, but I'm not money driven, so I'm probably the wrong person to ask by that. But it's more about figuring it out before you have to do it 100%.
Okay, great. So what are a couple of tips, 2 or 3 tips, that you could recommend to somebody who thinks they really want to start something on the side? What do you think are the most important things for them to do?
I think the first thing you should do is talk to somebody who's doing what you're doing or what you want to do. And it's scary, but reach out to them. They'll be happy to sort of help you out, get to know you, but really get a feel from them what their highs and lows of the job is. And usually they're pretty transparent about it, but ask questions, be smart about it, figure out sort of the areas that you could be blind to through that conversation. I also say, which some people laugh at me about, but I say take like 1 or 2 weeks off from your regular job as a vacation and work as a full-time hustler during that time. And yes, you'll miss out on a vacation, but that's okay. But really, act as if and see if it's something that you think you can do for every day for the next year or so. And I also, with that, sort of scale back on your income as well to see if sort of that flow and flux is something you're able to manage. Those are the main things that I think you should do when trying to sort of start a side hustle. And I also think that learning from the business that you're in currently is very helpful. So I've always been someone who went outside my department to ask questions and figure out what the business is doing and understand the numbers. And that's really helped me in my own business to understand how a functional, successful business already works.
Oh, that's great. That's really good advice. So speaking of sort of being back at work, you wrote a post recently that I love that says, "You're not a superstar." I love it. Thought it was great. And as I read through it, I was realizing, everything I was reading, I was like, these all, in the post, they all apply to, sort of the talent, at work, and have you been identified as an emerging leader or something like that, a high potential. And as I was reading through them, I thought these all apply to being an entrepreneur. Are you doing these things as an entrepreneur? So what are the 3, and like we said, you've had pretty great success quickly this time around anyway. You put up your site in March and were quit by April, right? So you're doing pretty well. What are 3 things that you do, you think, on a daily basis that contribute to your success?
Oh, that's a good question. I wish I were better at it, to be very honest with you. I still struggle maybe not daily, but weekly on schedule, on my time, on figuring out when to do what. I've recently sort of figured out that every day when I wake up at the time I wake up until right after lunch, I'm writing. And for me, it's either a post, a guest post, or my book. So that keeps me, that's when I'm freshest and most creative and sort of can super focus, zoom in. That's been very helpful for me. I think another thing that has been helpful is really picking different friends. I know that sounds really strange, but my offline friends don't really get the business because a lot of them are at traditional jobs. And so my sort of woes of, I didn't get any phone calls today, or I only had one newsletter sign up, they are like, and? Like, they look at me like crazy. They're nice. I love them. But I think you get what I'm saying. So I've really made an effort, which is outside of my comfort zone, to be very frank with you, to surround myself with people who are in the same space and understand what I'm trying to do. And, that's been great just from a sanity check perspective for myself of like, I know this sounds crazy, but what do you think? So that's been helpful. And the other thing that I have found has been helpful for me is I am 100% transparent on my site. And I don't know how not to be, so that's probably a bad thing or a fault of mine. But I get a lot of comments from my friends online and from sort of people and clients that that's so helpful. You're so transparent. I try to talk about things that people want to know without the cloud of we can't really tell you type of stuff. So that to me has helped keep me grounded and focused on what my mission is and what I'm doing.
That's great. That's really good advice. So we have, probably a lot of people that are listening they're ready. They're excited to quit their job. They can't wait to go. Some people kind of think it's a little bit far off in the future, and all they really want to do is figure out how the heck to be happier in their job right now. So what are some things what are some tips to offer people that are, they're just not at the point, or maybe they never will be at the point where they want to start their own thing, but they know that right now it's not working. How can they get happier at their own job? And I know you wrote a book about that, and we can talk about it later. But
I'm looking at the book
right
now.
Show it to us. Yay! Stop hating your job.
How to be happy at work without quitting. So
awesome.
It's a perfect segue for you. I think, first of all, it is so easy to be unhappy at work. It is. It's easy. It's sort of a rite of passage or a gang type of thing. Everyone's miserable, and it's easy to fall into that. So the most important thing to start with is changing your mindset. And I call it sort of declare your intention with this and say, I'm not going to hate my job anymore. And when you find yourself going into that, it's kind of that rubber band reminder of, no, we're not hating our job today. So I think that's a first big hurdle. The next thing is to go through and literally write down. I know we think about things all the time and it's sort of a treadmill in our head, but write down all of the things that you are unhappy with at work. The specifics. This person, da-da-da-da-da, and, I don't like filing these reports or whatever it is. And then, really look at them and see if there's a theme and figure out if there is, if everything that you don't like doing is around writing, figure out if there's a way that you can solve that, whether it's reframing your mind about writing or go take a writing class or see if someone else can do the writing parts for you. It's really about understanding why you're unhappy at work, what makes you unhappy. And then from there, it's understanding what motivates you. So I have this thing called the balance scale. It's on my site as well, of really, what drives you. I think we try to sort of Band-Aid reasons without understanding, well, I'm unhappy at work because I'm not getting X, Y, and Z out of it. So really figuring out what your sort of two balance points are for that job. And it'll change for each job. When I was in corporate America, one of mine was money and super exciting things. I wanted to be challenged. I like new things. So, money. I could be paid a lot of money and be super bored at work, and I'd still be okay, or vice versa. But if they both were down, I hated my job. And so understanding what motivates you for that job and reminding yourself of those motivations every day if you need to is a really good step in the right direction. That to me has sort of changed work and perspective of work more than anything else that I've done.
That's great. And it's actually totally applicable for entrepreneurs, people that are doing their own thing as well, because, I know for me over the last 7 years, there have definitely been times where I said, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm just going to go get a job, right? It's just, there's so many things that become difficult and you struggle through, and those are good points no matter what, whether you're working for yourself or you're working for somebody else. So that's great. So people can get that book at, what is the website for that? Oh, stophatingyourjob.com. It's stophatingyourjob.com, but there's a space between each one, right?
It's on there as well.
Okay. And I'll definitely have it on the site for you. So what do you love most about what you do?
I love, freedom for me is my number one driving value. I love doing what I do best the way I do it best. And so for that encompasses everything from, I love writing, I love designing and tweaking websites. I love working with people. And so that itself, just the option of having those choices and freedom is what I love most about my job.
That's awesome. So what are you excited about right now? What's new that you're working on that we all get to see soon?
Yay! I always have a lot that I'm working on. I like having a lot of juggling things. So I have a new book coming out in October-ish, and it title's still working on, long story there, but it's essentially a soup to nuts guide of how to get a job. Everything from before you start, after you kind of know where you're going, but how to clean up your online profiles and your resume, offer letters, on through accepting the position and what to look for. So everything HR hasn't told you.
Yeah, that's awesome. It feels like an insider look at it.
Sure, for sure. And I have a few other websites that are coming up. They'll obviously be on my site when they launch. But one is focused, HR for employees, and the other is HR for employers.
Oh, great.
So different opportunities to interact with me.
Yeah, so you do like to do a lot of different things. This is like you have found the perfect vehicle for it.
Yes.
That's great.
Well, for now, right?
Yeah, for the moment. Well, it's been so great having you here. I know that you've offered so much for people that are listening, and I loved having you on the show. So I will make sure to give everybody all the links to everything that you're doing, and certainly promote your book when it comes out. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It was truly a pleasure.
Yeah. Okay, we'll see everybody later.
Bye.
Bye.